Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second annual Budget Town Hall. I'm excited to welcome you back. We started this last year, and this is an opportunity for us to engage with the community to let you know about what's happening in the budget and to provide some important information about where our revenue as a city comes from and how we're spending it. Three of our core values of our city government are transparency, accountability, and good stewardship. And that's what we're looking to accomplish throughout this process. Every year now we have a budget theme. Last year's budget theme was back to the basics. As a city that's quickly growing, we need to make sure that the house that we build is on a solid foundation. And this year's budget is building trust. It's building trust between council and staff, between staff and the community, and between the government and the community. Because as our engineer, our city manager, Dan Johnson, will say, the triangle is one of the strongest shapes. And that's what we're trying to do, is to have a solid community as we head into the future. I'd like to start with introducing the city council that I have the privilege of serving with. We have here with us tonight our Mayor Pro Tem Crystal Sarmiento. We have Councilman Keith Bonner, Councilman Ed Perry, and Councilman Harry Oplager, who aren't able to be here tonight, but they're with us in spirit, are Councilman Jerome Hudson and also Councilman David Lands. And as I had talked about, the goal for this budget town hall is to explain everything about the budget, to explain the basics of what is a municipal budget, how is a tax rate set, where does our revenue come from, and how is it spent? How are we using the money that you've entrusted to us to put it to good use for you? And to start this part off, I'd like to introduce our Director of Finance, who is going to explain a little bit about what even is a municipal budget and how does it work differently than what you might see from a budget perspective in other businesses. So, Rosie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. What is a municipal budget? A municipal budget is a financial plan that the city follows closely throughout the year. The components of the municipal budget are, first of all, what money we're planning to earn, which is your revenue, and what money we're planning to spend, which is your expenditures. It also shows what we're owe to other places, the loans, the bonds, which is your debt service. We have funds that are reserved for specific use that we cannot touch other than for that purpose. We have capital projects. That is those large projects that we're seeing going up around the area, your water tower, your public safety building, public works, and others. We have transfers. We have transfers between between different funds, and we have transfers coming in from fund balance and transfers out to other funds. What is a fiscal year? For most people, we're used to the calendar year from January to December. The city uses a fiscal year. Ours starts October the 1st through September the 30th. It all depends on every entity what fiscal year they want to use.
Awesome job. Thank you, Rosie. Appreciate that. What we're going to do next is we're going to have our City Secretary, Tammy Bell, come forward. Tammy has 20-plus years of experience in municipal government, and she's going to talk about the timeline and all the work that goes into the budget. It doesn't just happen overnight, but there's a process that we follow. There's also statutory regulations and requirements that dictate what we do and when we do it. So, Tammy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to go over the budget development timeline. Basically, the budget process is an ongoing activity throughout the entire fiscal year between the finance director and the city manager. They're constantly monitoring the budget to make sure that we're within the realms of what was adopted. However, come about March, April, that's when the finance director starts working with the staff to start preparing for the next fiscal year budget. So if you'll notice on the timeline, under Category 1 for the initial assessment of the current budget, typically that process starts around May and June. When you go to number 2 on the timeline for the department involvement in planning, that's going to be around June and July. 2 and 3 go kind of hand in hand as the department's involvement in planning. That's when we start really looking at our needs assessments. what we've currently accomplished and what we think we're going to need for the new year. And then when you get to the budget presentations and property valuations for number 4, that's usually the very first meeting in July. Each department director will present their budget to the council. That is a new process. It just started last year. It gives the department directors an opportunity to address the council with the public, to let them know where they think their needs are. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get all of those, but it at least lets the council know firsthand from that person who's the most familiar with their department. Then when you get to number 5 on the timeline for the city's continuing the city staff presenting the budget, then you get the proposed budget. Article 8 of our city charter requires that the city manager submit on or before August 1st the proposed budget to the city council. So we have 2 different working documents that give us our timeline for the budget. The city manager follows the city charter timeline. However, for the municipal secretary, I follow the Texas Local Government Code. And for the Texas Local Government Code, it sets a whole separate calendar for the budget and tax rate adoption, separate from what our charter sets. So August 1st, the council has a proposed budget, and then the budget hearing, that is actually set based off of the local government code. So for the Texas Local Government Code, it mandates that the budget officer file a proposed budget with the municipal clerk before the 30th day before the date the governing body of the municipality makes its tax levy for the fiscal year. Once the finance director has filed the proposed budget with the municipal secretary, then we can schedule the public hearing. The public hearing for the budget is the 15th, has to be the 15th day after the date the proposed budget is filed with the municipal clerk, but before the date the governing body makes its tax levy. So somewhere between 15 days after it's filed with the clerk and the date of the adoption of the tax levy, somewhere in between there is the date that the schedule is set for the public hearing. So now if we move on to number 8 on the timeline, we're going to discuss the tax rate hearing. The tax rate hearing for this year will be September the 16th. After the hearing, the recommendation to City Council would be to adopt the fiscal year budget, then have an action item to ratify the tax rate for that fiscal year budget, and then to adopt the tax rate to support the fiscal year budget. Should the City Council not be ready to adopt that tax rate on the 16th, they do have the option of meeting on the following Friday, which is September the 20th. However, they have to make a decision by no later than September the 23rd, because the adoption has to be within 7 days of that public hearing that was held on the 16th. So although the last day of the month is the date that the taxing unit must adopt a tax rate by, you also have to take into effect the calendar of when the public hearing was for the tax rate and making sure it stays within those 7 days, which is why that September 23rd would be the absolute last day for the council to take action on the tax rate. Do I have any questions? So the question from the public was, what happens if on that final date that the tax rate is not adopted? What would happen is it would revert back to the previous year budget, operating budget for the city. You can't take action on the tax rate after that deadline date. Any other questions? All right, then I'll refer back to Mayor Davis. Thank you.
All right, so next I'm going to take some time and talk about general fund revenues for last fiscal year compared to this fiscal year. And one of the things that I learned when I was first elected to City Council is that a municipal budget operates a lot differently than if you are a private or even publicly traded business from a budget standpoint. You have timelines and parameters that are set by the state that we have to follow and we have to comply by. The other thing is our revenues are not established based off of a product that we produce or sell. Our revenues come in through a variety of different sources. And here's the breakdown for this past year's budget, or the current fiscal year that we're in. It's made up of property taxes, which is your ad valorem taxes, different license and permits that might come through, your sales tax that we bring in as a city. You also have franchise fees, other revenue sources, which I'll talk about that in a minute. You have interest that's earned from money that is currently sitting in different fund balances. You have fines and fees from the municipal court, and then you have transfer in. So when it says transfer in, what that means is if in 1 year you have an overage, so you have more revenue that's come in than expenditures, that money gets moved into your fund balance at the end of the year. So for the following year, you might not bring in enough revenue in order to meet your expenses that you might want to make as you go throughout that year. So the opportunity would be to pull from your fund balance to transfer in that money in order to cover different costs that might come up. So for example, this past fiscal year, we had a road that needed to be reconstructed. And so we had to transfer in money from our fund balance in order to cover that, because that was unexpected and that was not in the budget. From the other sources, it gives an example, TERS. A TERS is a tax increment reinvestment zone. So all of Meridiana, and even some of the land outside of Meridiana, is in a TERS. And what that means is pretty much 100% of the property tax for Meridiana goes back to pay off the debt that was issued by Meridiana to put in their infrastructure. So that's a lot of property tax that we are not able to recognize as a city that goes right back to the developer. What we have is in the agreement with the developer is per home they pay us, we get to keep a certain amount of that property tax, which I believe it's $500-$600 per home, something along those lines. When instead the property tax might be $3,000, we only keep a portion, a very small portion of it. So that's what you'll see is from other sources. So we've given you a breakdown in the pie chart with percentages, what each area makes up. So you can see ad valorem makes up about 40%, licenses and permit revenues makes up 31%, and sales tax makes up 15%. If we look at what's the budget that's been proposed, you can see that ad valorem property taxes, the percentage of revenue drops from 40% to 37%. The revenue from licenses and permits jumps up from 31% to 32%. And then sales tax decreases from 15% to 13% of our total revenue. So let's talk about what are taxes. The City of Manvel is one of many taxing entities that you as a resident of Manvel pay taxes to. We are not your total tax bill, and we are not the biggest portion of your tax bill. We used an example here in the next slide, but depending on where you live in Manvel, this is the list of different entities that you might pay taxes to. It could be the school district, the city, a municipal utility district, the county, the ESD, and the community college. So there's a lot of entities that make up your property taxes. For the City of Manvel, your taxes are driven by what the county dictates to us. So every year, based off of the appraisals that have come in, the county says, here is your no new revenue rate, and here is your voter approval rate. And you have to fall somewhere in between. And based off of where you set your tax rate at, there's different statutory requirements and stipulations associated with that. So here's an example of where do your dollars go? And this is a pretty cool slide that depicts it. If you had a $1 bill based off of you being a home in the Blue Water Lakes subdivision, which is right off of Highway 6 to the west of the high school, here is what's been proposed for the different taxing entities, how your taxes would break out. So 35% of every dollar you pay in property taxes goes to the school district. 27% of every dollar that you pay would go to the MUD that you're in. So every dollar that you pay in taxes, what is that? That's a total of 62% of that goes to the school district, and goes to the MUD. The City of Manvel then comes up in third with 17%, and you can see the rest as it goes on through. This is a slide that Rosie and our city manager put together that traces all the way back to 1999 to show how the tax rate has fluctuated. So you can see in 1999, it was a tax rate set at 65 cents. It then jumped up in 2000 to 75 cents. Slowly worked its way down, had another spike there up to 71 cents, and then it held flat from 2007 until 2016 at 58 cents. It had a slight dip down, and then in 2019, it jumped all the way from 57 cents up to 69 cents. And since 2019, it's been working its way down since then. Last year, a historically low rate of 56 cents was adopted by City Council, and what's being proposed in this year's budget is keeping it flat at 56 cents. One of the reasons why we're keeping it flat at 56 cents is because of the homestead exemption that the City of Manvel just adopted. So the state allows municipalities and cities and governmental entities to implement homestead exemptions. Your homestead exemption could be if you're a disabled veteran, if you're over the age of 65, or you can have a flat homestead exemption that is either a dollar amount, generally you see it be a percentage, up to 20% that a municipality can utilize. Up until this year, the City of Manvel, for just the average resident, did not have a homestead exemption. We had it for those that were disabled veterans, we had it for those over 65, but not for a majority of our population. So as the city council and city staff looked at the numbers, we ultimately adopted a homestead exemption of 10%. We could go up to the max of 20%, and we chose to settle right there within the middle. And so the homestead exemption offsets your valuation increase in your property. Then your property consists of your land and also any buildings that you have on your land. And so when you look at the tax rate that's being proposed of 56 cents in combination with a 10% homestead exemption, the average Manvel resident is going to see a tax payment decrease in their bill to the city. Now, I think it's important to be transparent. If your property has increased by more than 10%, there's a good chance that your tax bill will go up to the city. By keeping the tax rate flat and giving a 10% exemption, if let's say your property increased by 5% in value, then you're going to see probably a 5% savings on your tax bill to the city. So I know that was a lot of information about taxes, the homestead exemption, historical rates. The next slide that we have is what do we provide with our portion, but I want to see if anybody has any questions about that before we move on. Okay. So next we have our city manager, Dan Johnson, to talk about what do we provide with the revenue that we bring in.
Thank you, Mayor. So what do we provide with our portion? As you might imagine, the Public Safety Department is the single biggest department in the city. And our Public Safety Department includes our police, of course, our fire marshal's office, code enforcement officers, animal control. And so that's 43%. It's about half of our overall staff. So the police, of course, is the biggest division within that department. And that's everything from patrol to our criminal investigations, our dispatch, and administration. So that's the biggest group. The second one is administration, and that includes, of course, our finance department, utility billing, human resources, personnel, and information technology. So that's about 21% of the overall budget. The third one would be our public works department, and that's about 17%. So that's streets, drainage, water, sewer, all of that kind of good stuff. Mowing, mowing the rights of ways that we maintain. So that's about 17% of their overall budget. Fourth is development services. So that's our planners and our engineers. That's all the folks that have meetings with potential developers that are going to come to the city, or that also includes all of our permitting and all of our inspections. So that's about 11%. And then after that, we've also got municipal court expenditures. If you've had to, for any reason, come to municipal court, I'm sure that you've seen this room gets very, very full, as does the parking lot. So that's our municipal court. And then finally is the library. We don't own the library facility, but we do have a partnership with the county, and so that's a small portion as well. Altogether, just under $16 million to run the city in a year. Tammy showed you this slide a minute ago, and so it's pretty neat to see where we're at. We're almost to the end of this particular budget preparation time. So we're just a week away. If everything goes well, and council will hear our final budget presentation next Monday night, and if we're there, then they can adopt it that night, and come October 1, we'll have our new budget for the next fiscal year. So we're on the home stretch. So what are some of our priorities for this coming year? As the mayor mentioned, building trust is our not catchphrase, but it's our theme, I guess, right, for this year. So how do we build trust? So and I think that's kind of the goal. Is each year we want to have a theme. We have got so many projects, as I'll talk to you about in a second. So we've reestablished a lot of internal workings and had a lot more transparency. I think this last year, everything from like this. Obviously, this town hall that we're doing right now to we've really gone above and beyond, I think, with our public information officer and what she has been providing in Tammy's department. Just it's been really amazing what Brooke has been doing for us. So the budget will simplify spending and prioritize essential services and functions while minimizing non-essential or discretionary expenditures to focus on core responsibilities. So that's kind of the way that we phrase it, to just get back to, as we said last year, getting back to the basics. So what are some common misconceptions? With goodness, with all this money floating around seemingly, funds can be just spent on anything. Well, it would be nice sometimes if that were the case, but they can't. So, for example, funds that come in on the water and sewer side, those are utility funds, and those have to be spent in the utility department. So, same thing. We've got several different funds. We've got a TERS fund. We've got vehicle replacement fund. I don't know how many different funds we have. Probably 15 or so. There are several different ones, and you can move money from one to another, but that is going to take the approval of city council. So it all has to be done very transparently out in the open. Surplus funds are spent immediately. So we have a new policy in place to try and aim for at least 50% of our overall annual budget, to keep that in reserve, if you will. And so if that number starts getting up a little bit healthier, hey, we've got 60%. Well, those are surplus funds. Let's go spend those immediately. Hold on. I submit to you Hurricane Beryl. Prayerfully, Tropical Storm Francine does not come our way. But if she does, then, we've got to have funds set aside for all of the cleanup and all of the debris. As you know, it takes time and a lot of money to clean all that stuff up. So it's smart to be prudent and hold on to those funds. I don't know, at least until after hurricane season, but there are lots of different things that can pop up throughout the year. So we try and be very frugal with those. And again, those funds can't be spent without council's approval, of course. I sort of touched on this one, the one there at the bottom. Funds can be easily moved around, somewhat within a department. If you're talking about funds within one specific department, there's a little bit of leverage there. I'll make it something easy. If you had planned on buying a bunch of blue pens this year, but you need some binders instead, okay, well, you can move that money around. That doesn't take city council's approval. But once you jump out of a department and you wanted to move funds from Public Works to Public Safety, then again, that's got to come to council, and we do a budget amendment and everything like that. And of course, Mayor talked about this a second ago. All property tax goes to the city, if only, right, Mayor? And I wonder about that sometimes. Not. I won't talk about the school district. We know where those funds go, but most people that live within a MUD, those taxes don't pay. A lot of times, at least for sure, the city MUDs don't necessarily pay for the water and sewer. They don't pay for the police. They don't pay for. They don't even pay for the road repairs. So it's really just reimbursing the developer in most cases. So even so, the city taxes are at least half, sometimes a third of what a MUD tax might be. And that's where your police and fire marshal and streets and drainage and water and sewer and all of those things get taken care of. Let's see, go to the next one here. So as an example, and the mayor touched on this a second ago too, some of the development incentives. So these are just some of the bigger ones that are have been adopted by previous councils. Some going all the way back to 2010 for Meridiana, and that's a 40-year agreement essentially. So an overall amount of $103 million of an incentive back to the development itself. And so what does that mean? Well, so until we reach that $103 million threshold, 100% of the ad valorem taxes go back to that development. 50% of the sales tax within Meridiana go back to that development. Even Manvel Town Center, 50% of the ad valorem taxes go back to the development, and 50% of the sales tax go back to the development. So absolutely, HEB and McDonald's and the other things that are Whataburger. Larry's not in here right now, but the Whataburger. He's waiting. He's out in the parking lot waiting for Whataburger to open. All of those things, while it's certainly 50% of something is more than 0% of something, but it's not the full amount that we get. But so if you're kind of doing the back of the envelope numbers, trying to figure out, gosh, why don't we have more sales tax? Well, that's why it took some incentives to get those developments to come here. So this is just a quick little overall. Valencia is a big one that's just kind of getting started. I say getting started. They've done 7 sections in the last year and a half. So, and then Del Bello Lakes, that's where the Toyota dealership and everything is too. So some of the projects this year, and probably one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of new capital projects in this year's budget is because we're completing the ones that we got started last year. The public safety building, if you've driven down Masters Road, you'll see the new police station, and it's just amazing how fast that building is going up. They've got some concrete obviously on the ground, some of the road itself is in, and the building envelope you can see. And I think we've got some of the aerials and some of the drone footage up on our website that you can take a look at. So it's going to take every bit of this year to complete that building. And Dylan, is it 40,000? I want to say it's like 44,000 square feet. It's a large facility. Yeah. And then the next one is the Public Works campus. It's just north of that, also on 1128, just to the north of Scott Street. So I've talked about this a bunch, but I'm really excited about a Public Works facility because for the first time ever, if a citizen wants to go in and visit with somebody about their drainage ditch or something needs to be mowed, or hey, this road has got a big pothole in it, you'll have a facility that you can go to and, go to the front door and there's a lobby and there's a waiting area, and you'll have public parking and all those kind of things. So we've never had that before. Has anybody been to the Public Works facility? 1, 2, yeah, 2, 3 out of the whole room. So it's not that it's not publicly known, it's just, not very accessible. So this facility is going to be great, where you can actually go in and, pick up your water meter or whatever you need to do. The elevated storage tank just to the north of the Toyota dealership, very excited about that project. And in fact, it's getting up there pretty tall. If you can actually see it from 288 now. It won't be much longer that we'll have 1 million gallons of stored water up in the air, and that's really exciting. The gardens at Croy Park, so they're completing the third phase of that project, and that was really mainly the gardens. So that's a kind of a neat little butterfly, and gosh, I always mess up the acronym. What do they say? Birds, butterflies, and bees? I think that's right. The pollinators, yeah. So if Brian Wilmer's watching right now, he's shaking his head because I probably didn't get it right. But anyway, the gardens itself, and it's just really beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to go out there, there's still more work to be done at Croy. But anyway, we're completing that third phase. We're still working on an update to our comprehensive plan and our major thoroughfare plan. And then finally, the street improvement work. If you haven't noticed lately, there are fewer and fewer gravel roads in the city of Manvel, and we're converting those to asphalt. And I think we've got two complete roads left out of the almost a dozen gravel roads that we still had, and then two that are under construction right now. Of course, the weather hasn't helped with that lately, but that was just phase one. And then the next phase, we're looking at some different possibilities. There are several spots in the city that could really use a traffic signal. A couple on County Road 58, for instance, possibly 1128. So haven't gone through that with council yet, just to see exactly where they want to spend those funds. But there's not a shortage of places to spend money for improvements. I can just leave it at that. We've got sidewalks that we want to put in, traffic signals. Some asphalt roads are in need of repair for sure. So other projects that are just now getting going, the wastewater treatment plant, so water reclamation facility, that's a very expensive project, but it's going to help us prepare for future development. It's a 1 million gallon per day water reclamation facility. It's going to be on Corporate Drive, just right there by the concrete plant, just like the old one is. It's going to be on the west side of Corporate Drive instead of the east side where the existing 0.5 MGD plant is. So that's going to take a couple of years to actually build that full plant. The City Hall campus, we've outgrown this building and the building next door, so we're actually going to add a third building about the size of this building right here, just probably next door where the parking lot is. We've acquired the two parcels across the street, just to the north of us, and if you haven't seen those plans, they're pretty exciting of what we're hoping to do with our architect on that side of Large Avenue. Not just a regular parking lot, but a parking lot with a small park and maybe even a dog park, and hopefully some really exciting things that we want to do with the playground equipment, if possible, to allow kids that don't always get to go to every kind of playground. So we're going to see how that works out, but that's a very exciting project. And 1128 water and sewer, that's exciting only because I'm an engineer, but running water and sewer from Lewis Lane all the way up Masters Road, 1128, all the way up to Dogwoods where the fire station is. So that will allow our two new facilities on Masters to have water and sewer, and also actually potentially provides for some future commercial development on Masters. And then the Camino permitting software, we added that one too. I guess it was last Monday night that they gave the first presentation. So what this is going to do, if you wanted to build something or you wanted to buy something, some land in Manvel, and you weren't really sure what you could put there, or you're thinking about putting this thing there, well, you can come and visit with us and our whole team. You can always do that. But what this is going to allow you to do, if you're awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and you just want to go online and kind of, I wonder what I could do here, and you can go through kind of this electronic flow chart, and it'll help you show what land use zone you're in. It'll help you show what flood zone you're in, and then what things are permitted, what things might take some extra steps to get there. So we're going to roll that out this year, and that will be really amazing. Actually, it'll be helpful for our team as well, because once it's all said and done, then you get a printout that you can carry with you, and then kind of, hey, what did we just talk about? We talked about a lot of things, and you'll have a printout. So I think that comes to the conclusion of my part, Mayor.
So we did have one question, and great overview there, Manager Dan. There was one question that we'll get to. And when we talk about capital projects, something that our city manager has said in our meetings is he views it as like the game of Risk. if you've ever played Risk. Every move, you roll your dice, and you can either choose to move your army and attack, or you can fortify your defenses and fortify your army. And last year's budget was a very aggressive budget that has allowed us to do a lot of amazing things for the community. This year's, we're slowing down a little bit. We're making sure that we fortify, we complete some of these capital projects. I believe the number is 13 capital projects totaling $100 million in value that are actively happening right now, and we only have one capital projects director, so it's a team effort to support those. But as you can see, there's a lot of exciting things in the works. There's other things that we're looking at that weren't mentioned there, such as monument signs for entrances to the city. So instead of coming to Manvel and saying I'm a part of Pomona or Meridiana or Lakeland, you have a sense of we're actually in Manvel. We're looking at things such as, being able to hopefully do a Christmas parade this year. Last year we had planned it, but it was rained out. So doing more festivals and activities. We've been having the monthly farmers market by an organization called Manvel Market that's happening. Last month they did it. They had 18 vendors. This month they had 43 vendors that were there. It happens on the first Saturday of every month. So there's a lot of exciting things that are happening. We're moving in the right direction. And the question that we had, let me pull it right here. So this was from an individual that lives in Blue Water. And the question was, with the tax revenue from Valencia, will our taxes, particularly the mud taxes, decrease? And that's a really good question. I'll take a stab at this first, and then we'll see if you guys have anything to add. So your mud taxes are separate than the city taxes. They are decided on by a separate board that usually when the mud is formed, the board is handpicked by the developer. Then as you begin to build out, then eventually you'll start to see residents within the mud that actually get appointed to the board. We also, like myself and Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento, we live in Mud 61. I think Councilman Bonner, you live in Mud 61 as well. So for the longest time, it was all developer-appointed board members. Well, now I believe it is all resident voted on board members. And at that point, then they can start to make decisions. Do they want to annex more land? Do they want to issue more debt? Or do they want to start utilizing your tax dollars to pay down the debt that's owed to the developer? And the whole goal of mud taxes is like tollways. It's supposed to eventually dissipate. We all know how tolls work, that they never go away. But the goal is hopefully for your mud taxes to eventually go away once the developer has been paid back. So Valencia, I believe, is a different mud than Blue Water is. So it's two different mud entities, but the tax revenue that we'll get from Valencia, the property tax, 90% of it goes back to the developer to pay back $18 million. But the money that we do get, along with the sales tax that these additional households will bring to the city, will allow us to do more, not necessarily decrease your mud taxes. That's governed separately. If anybody, after they watch this video or review the budget, they want to come to our next council meeting and sign up to speak during the public comment section, let us know what your thoughts are. The goal with this budget is to make sure that we provide a service to the community and that we build trust. And so we want any and all feedback. There's a few ways that you can get connected with the city. And so if you're watching this online afterwards, if you pause right here, pull up your phone, scan these QR codes. So we have our City of Manvel Connect, which allows us where we'll send you our monthly newsletters. We'll send you notifications. We'll even be able to, if you sign up for it, send you notifications of when different meetings occur. We have a financial transparency page that all reports that we have to submit to the state, as well as past year's budgets and audits, are publicly posted on the city website. And then we have the city manager's report, which is a monthly report that's put together by our city manager and the team here at City Hall, highlighting all the activities that we are doing here at the city. This is provided to council every month, but we also have it now available to the public, and you can visit the city website for that. We are active on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And if there's ever anything that you guys need, please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you for being here, and this will wrap up the Budget Town Hall. Thank you.